Today, we delve into the emotional journey of a man named Asher, a 20-month-old data analyst living in the vibrant city of Portland, Oregon. Asher is engaged to a woman named Maya, a relationship that has blossomed over the past 5 years. Yet the warmth of that love is overshadowed by a family dynamic steeped in subtle prejudice and favoritism. Asher's story begins with his upbringing in a household where accomplishments were a currency of love. His parents, Daniel and Susan, were endlessly supportive of their younger son, Finn, one of the family's artistic hopes. Finn, at just 27, was celebrated for his creative exploits, a striking contrast to Asher, who continuously worked hard to earn his achievements. Asher's triumphs, marked by diligence and a commitment to steady growth, were undermined by remarks that trivialized his accomplishments and highlighted Finn's fleeting attempts at creativity. It was palpable at every family gathering. Conversations would invariably veer toward Finn's latest artistic endeavor. Whether it was an amateur art project or a short-lived podcast, Finn's efforts were met with grand acclaim, while Asher's steady career as a data analyst, on which he prided himself, was continually dismissed with comments like, "That is just Asher, always practical," or "He is good at boring stuff." Asher's realization was painful. His family's affection was largely reserved for the sensitive artist, effectively rendering him invisible. The landscape of their family was painted with a bias so ingrained that it shaped their perspectives and actions long into adulthood. Asher worked tirelessly through college, saving every penny from part-time jobs to earn his first car. Finn, on the other hand, received a trendy hybrid for his 18th birthday without having lifted a finger. Their parents rationalized this disparity. "Finn needs space to explore, and Asher, you are so independent, you understand." Over time, Asher developed a quiet resilience, a steely exterior cultivated by years of feeling undervalued. He turned inward, nurturing a desire to prove himself to a family that seemed preoccupied with their notion of success as reserved for the artist among them. While Asher continued to climb the corporate ladder, earning promotions and respect for his analytical mind, Finn's precarious string of failed creative ventures, including a failed graphic design startup and an online vintage clothing store, were continuously bailed out by their parents. This ongoing financial support and glorification fueled a toxic enabling cycle, one that allowed Finn to persist in believing that mediocrity was synonymous with genius. Family gatherings painfully illustrated this dynamics. Each event became a battleground where Finn's bold endeavors overshadowed the steady achievements of Asher, who was keenly aware of the underlying tension. Subtle digs at Asher's boring life became the theme of these interactions, and the once carefree brotherly bond morphed into a complex web of passive-aggressive remarks and competition. Asher felt the weight of these familial expectations, grappling with the notion that success could only be defined through the lens of creativity, a standard that was ultimately unattainable for him. In the swirl of this family chaos, Asher's relationship with Maya blossomed like a warm ember amid winter's chill. He met her at a local independent film festival where she was volunteering. Their connection was instantaneous. They bonded over shared interests in obscure documentaries and classic literature. In Maya, Asher found a comforting escape from his family's judgmental gaze. Her acceptance enveloped him in a sense of belonging he rarely experienced. Together they explored Portland's eclectic art scene, but Asher often felt a smattering of responsibility to protect their love from the incessant scrutiny of their families. Unfortunately, Maya was not immune to the subtle critiques Asher faced. Daniel and Susan, always the critics, often made disparaging remarks about Maya, dismissing her as too grounded or lacking a certain spark. Their judgments were veiled but unmistakable, and the comments stung. Asher watched as Finn slowly began to infiltrate Maya's space, showing an insidious interest in her projects and thoughts. Initially, Asher misread this behavior as supportive brotherly concern, but in hindsight, it felt more like a measure of competition. The engagement was a milestone that should have been celebrated with joy. After 3 years of dating, Asher proposed to Maya, her enthusiastic acceptance radiant with love. Yet, their family's reactions fell flat. Susan smiled politely, and Daniel merely offered a curt nod, both failing to mask their subdued excitement. Finn's congratulatory hug lingered far too long, a fleeting spark of satisfaction behind his eyes that Asher found disconcerting. It was the first time he questioned his brother's intentions. The line between familial affection and rivalry sharply blurred. As the weeks passed, Maya became seemingly engrossed in a new community art project, an endeavor she frequently referenced in hushed tones, prompting Asher's worry. Late-night texts from whimsical parties she hesitated to discuss began to fray at the edges of his confidence. And then there were the faint sense of unfamiliar art supplies that clung to her clothing, hints that something was off but which he meticulously chose to dismiss. As the fabric of Asher's life began to unravel at the seams, he remained blissfully unaware of the tempest brewing behind the scenes, a storm that would irrevocably change everything he held dear, both in his relationship and his family dynamics. The stage was set for a confrontation that would force Asher to confront not just the betrayal of love, but the toxic dynamics that had shaped his life at the hands of his family. It became clear that the seeds of doubt had been sown long before he realized. In his quest for love and family acceptance, the pain of betrayal was lingering ominously in the shadows, waiting to emerge and shatter his world entirely. Asher's first encounter with Maya transpired serendipitously during a local independent film festival. Maya was volunteering, and her genuine passion for film, coupled with her radiant enthusiasm, immediately captivated Asher. Their mutual love for obscure documentaries and classic literature forged a deep connection, providing Asher with a sense of acceptance that had often eluded him in the company of his family. Maya became his refuge, a safe harbor amidst the storms of familial discontent. In the months that followed, Asher and Maya's relationship blossomed. Their dates turned into long conversations that roamed across endless topics, ranging from favorite authors to aspirations for their futures. With Maya by his side, Asher felt a welcomed reprieve from the notions of success dictated by his parents. She understood him in a way that made him feel valued, no longer just Asher, the practical and responsible son, but rather Asher, an individual with dreams and aspirations. Unfortunately, the peace that blossomed within the confines of their relationship was not shared by Asher's parents. Daniel and Susan, ever vocal in their critiques, were dismissive of Maya, often making veiled remarks that suggested she lacked a certain spark that could be deemed worthy of their family. They often wondered aloud whether Maya was artistic enough to fit in with their expectations, fueling Asher's frustration. How could they not see the love and authenticity that Maya brought into his life? Amidst these judgments, a concerning twist emerged. Finn, Asher's younger brother, who had always been perceived as the family's artistic darling, began to exhibit a troubling interest in Maya. Initially, Asher misinterpreted Finn's behavior as genuine brotherly support. Finn would frequently ask Asher questions about Maya, probing into her interests and thoughts, as if he was attempting to become more involved in their relationship. It was not unusual for brothers to share details about their significant others, but Finn's inquiries felt more like covert investigations. At first, Asher shrugged off these feelings, dismissing them as insecurities stemming from his own past of being overshadowed by Finn. In time, Asher felt compelled to voice his discomfort. Yet, with each glance Finn cast toward Maya, filled with an unsettling intensity, Asher's unease grew. During family gatherings, which were often dominated by Finn's art showcases, the subtle digs at Asher's career choices became more pronounced. "You should really loosen up, Asher," Finn would laugh. "Embrace your artistic side instead of your boring corporate life." Each comment, though cloaked in humor, carved deeper into the rift between the brothers. Despite the tension that lingered in the air, Asher held fast to the joy he found in Maya's company. As they prepared for their engagement, Asher felt a spark of hope. He proposed after 3 beautiful years together, flooded with anticipation and love. To his elation, Maya accepted, her joy radiating as she said yes. However, the reactions from their families fell disappointingly short of the celebration they deserved. Susan wore a polite yet distant smile, while Daniel offered only a cursory nod. But Finn's congratulatory embrace felt strange. His prolonged hug left Asher feeling unsettled and confused, as if Finn was celebrating not just their engagement, but something deeper, something sinister that lurked beneath the surface. As the whirlwind of their engagement settled, a new dimension to Maya's character began to emerge. She became deeply engrossed in a community art project she claimed to be leading, a project that increasingly consumed her time, drawing her attention away from Asher. Late-night texts, which left her looking flustered and distracted, raised alarm bells in Asher's mind. When he asked about these late-night outings, she would brush him off with an airy smile and a promise to explain everything when she could. It was this continuous dismissal, paired with vague explanations and a faint, unfamiliar scent lingering on her clothes, that stirred Asher's unease into a palpable anxiety. "I am probably overthinking this," Asher would often tell himself. He wanted to believe that their love provided ample grounds to conquer any challenge, even one that lacked a name but weighed heavily on his heart. But that nagging feeling grew, echoing louder against the familiar backdrop of his family's subtle expectations and judgments. Asher tried to tell himself that family dysfunction could not touch the genuine bond he shared with Maya, and yet the familiar patterns of jealousy and rivalry he experienced with Finn loomed over his relationship. The family gatherings remained a source of discomfort, often layered with passive-aggressive exchanges that both Asher and Maya tried to navigate together. As the days passed, it became increasingly clear that the outpouring of love between them was threatened by unseen forces. The happiness that was once theirs began to crack under pressure as insecurities seeped in through the cracks. In the weeks leading up to Maya's unexpected morning sickness, Asher felt the weight of his uncertainties grow heavier. The mention of a minor procedure she had scheduled sparked alarm bells amidst a swirling cocktail of hope and anxiety. The development of early pregnancy was a source of excitement, yet something gnawed at his insides. How could one reconcile the joy of impending parenthood with the looming specter of doubt? Yet through each moment filled with trepidation and hope, Asher held tightly onto his love for Maya, searching for clarity and reassurance. But what he could not foresee was how swiftly the illusion of their perfect love would shatter into a million shards, revealing the insidious betrayal that had taken root in their lives like an unwelcome weed, hidden among vibrant flowers. Asher's intuition would later prove uncompromisingly true. With the discovery of an appointment reminder card in Maya's jacket, everything Asher cherished would unravel beneath him in an agonizing confrontation that would forever change the trajectory of his life and the very fabric of his relationships. The truth that lay beneath the surface is often the hardest to face, and for Asher it would come crashing down like thunder on a silent night. Stay with us as we navigate this bridge between trust and betrayal, questioning how far familial loyalty can bend before it breaks. Asher's journey toward self-liberation will soon reveal itself as he learns what it truly means to sever ties from those who only seek to control and manipulate, leading him to confront not only his brother but also the ghosts of his past. In the quiet intimacy of their apartment, the atmosphere had shifted for Asher. What once felt like a cocoon, a private haven shared with Maya, was now infused with a pervasive tension that settled in the corners of his heart. Asher had spent countless hours daydreaming about being a father, the joys of guiding a tiny human through life, teaching them love and kindness. But as the sunrise painted their world warm hues of orange, the shadows of doubt crept in. Maya had been unwell, afflicted by relentless morning sickness that she attempted to brush off with casual remarks of just a phase. Yet even the most patient hearts began to fray. Anxiety had replaced the delight that usually accompanied thoughts of parenthood, as uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud over their once bright future. It was during one of those ordinary evenings, rife with mundane kitchen chatter, that everything would change. Asher had decided to tidy up the living room, while Maya rested. Each fallen item he picked up felt laden with memories. The couch where they had cuddled while watching a documentary, the table littered with half-finished art supplies from an event Maya had insisted on organizing for months. As he reached for her jacket, tossed carelessly on the back of a chair, his hand brushed past a crumpled reminder card that had slipped from a pocket. The deliberate nature of that simple action, that momentary misfortune of finding the card, was the catalyst that propelled Asher into a spiral of disbelief. He unfolded the card, and his heart sank. Written on it was the name of a local obstetrician-gynecologist, and the date circled in an ominous red. Asher's mind raced, managing to simultaneously grapple with disbelief and a rising tide of dread. Was Maya seeing a doctor for something serious? She had mentioned a minor procedure recently, but this felt too significant to merely be about procedure. The listed due date, which was shockingly only a few months away, made Asher's stomach drop. All the puzzle pieces that had seemed innocuous began to coalesce into a foreboding image. He could recall the vague, dismissive way Maya had responded to his inquiries about her sudden changes, backpedaling over the intricate details. The late-night texts that had stirred jealousy within him did not belong to mysterious art projects, but to something far more complicated, something that was shrouded in secrecy. As a visceral sense of threat crept over him, it forced him to the brink of a confrontation he never dreamed he would need to initiate. He approached Maya with the card in hand, standing hesitant at the threshold of uncertainty. The air between them felt electric, thick with unspoken truths. She noticed the card immediately, and the way her face paled only heightened his disquiet. Instead of the peaceful home they had built together, the abyss of betrayal loomed, threatening to swallow them whole. "Maya," he began cautiously, his voice unsteady yet firm. "What is this? The OB-GYN appointment?" A lump formed in his throat, witnessing the color drain from her cheeks in disbelief. She tried to deflect, leaning on feigned casualness, but the tremor in her hand betrayed her. At first, she veered off, attempting to dismiss the card with half-hearted excuses. Asher remained calm, steeling himself against the roller coaster of emotions that threatened to spill over. Deep in his gut, he knew that there was no room for ambiguity now. Clarity was mandatory. Under his steady gaze, Maya finally unraveled, tears spilling over as she confessed to the impossibility of her choices. "I am pregnant," she whispered, her voice shaky yet resolute. "But Asher, the child is not yours." The air in the room seemed to freeze, each word laced with suffocating weight. The ground beneath Asher's feet felt like it was crumbling away, revealing perilous depths of betrayal. Anguish flared inside him like wildfire, while Maya's confession hung heavy in the air, swirling around like an ever-hungry darkness. The world shifted, creating a new reality where everything he believed, his faith in their love, their future, crumbled instantaneously. And then came the name, quieter than the static silence that filled the room: Finn. Asher's mind raced, unable to comprehend the sheer magnitude of the implications. His own brother, the one he had shielded from judgment and had always preferred to overlook in favor of familial connections, had betrayed not just him, but the sanctity of love. Finn, the sensitive artist, with elevated status in their parents' eyes, he had weaved his way into Maya's vulnerabilities, exploiting them at the very moment Asher should have felt most secure. "It began at our engagement party," Maya continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Finn took every moment to lower your defenses. He made me question myself in that unique place I held in your world. He made me think that I needed someone who understood the connective tissue of creativity." With each word, Asher's heart cracked a little further, pain blossoming into full rejection. Maya explained how the affair had developed, blooming into something uncontainable during her newly appointed role in Finn's so-called community art project. An elaborate ruse for his secret rendezvous. Like a master manipulator, Finn had led them both to this point, pitting Maya against the very love she claimed to feel. Asher's world had tilted on its axis. He felt sheer rage, mixed with a potent sadness that he could not articulate. All he could do was process the visceral betrayal, the cutting realization that all those family dinners filled with passive-aggressive remarks had infected everything he held dear. Finn's passive competition, veiled as brotherly concern, had morphed into something sinister, striking at the vulnerabilities Asher had thought he had left behind. "Get out," he managed to say after a stifling silence, his voice hoarse from trying to focus past the pain. There was no polite offer to leave. There was only the need for self-preservation before getting engulfed by the emotional turmoil that threatened to drown him. The confrontation ended there, abrupt and jagged. Maya, in disbelief, gathered her things, her tears staining the remnants of what they once shared. Her presence now nothing but a painful reminder of a life that had shattered in an instant. That turbulent night faded into the dark abyss of his memories, but the scent of betrayal lingered long after. Asher felt overtaken, stewing with confusion, self-doubt, and a primal sense of protectiveness for himself. He packed a small bag for what felt like an unending journey. He asked Maya to leave. Her pained sobs echoed in his ears as he transitioned from rage to quiet devastation. Without a destination, he drove aimlessly through the streets of Portland, the city's lights echoing the tumult of emotions that swirled tirelessly within him. It felt futile driving in the bleakness of night, trying to outrun the storm that had just erupted in his life, one that was like an unstoppable freight train, plowing through any semblance of comfort he had known. He could not erase the betrayal. The trust that once tethered him to those he loved had been cut with surgical precision. In that moment of turmoil, he knew he needed to confront Finn. An immediate urgency took hold, an uncontrollable need to demand answers from the one young man who had leveraged their family's dysfunction against them. The road ahead was uncertain, like the fragile remnants of the relationships for which he held so much hope just hours before. But in that moment, with the weight of betrayal stinging his heart, Asher felt anger boiling within him, promising a confrontation that would shatter everything his family had ever claimed to hold dear. Stay with us as we delve into the aftermath of that fateful confrontation, where Asher must face not only Finn but the unshakable facade that family loyalty claims to uphold. The journey of self-actualization and liberation has only begun for Asher, and in the presence of betrayal he must discover his own strength, determining how high the cost of familial bonds truly is when pitted against the reality of authentic love. In the aftermath of destruction and betrayal, emotions ran high. Asher's heart pounded in his chest, a volatile cocktail of grief, disbelief, and fury surging through him. Packing a small bag felt surreal, as if he were in a waking nightmare. The familiar surroundings of their apartment, once vibrant with laughter and shared dreams, now felt grotesquely alien. Each item he placed into the duffel bag hit him like a wave of bitter nostalgia. He longed for the sanctuary they had built together, unaware that sanctuary had collapsed under the weight of deceit. "Please, Asher." Maya's voice quivered, saturated with a blend of anxiety and desperation. Yet, as he met her tear-stained eyes, he felt an unsettling detachment brewing within him. The warmth of connection had evaporated, replaced by the chilling knowledge of her betrayal. How could he look at her, at the woman he had envisioned sharing a life, a family with, when she had shattered everything with a single admission? "Maya, you need to leave," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The words fell between them like bricks, final and immovable. "But our son," she started, her words faltering under the weight of realization. "Not my son," he countered, each spoken word lacerating the air. "You have to go." It was not just the pregnancy that unsettled him. It was the undeniable certainty that her largesse of deception had crossed a limit from which there would be no return. The apartment, filled with scent memories, his favorite coffee brewing, her gentle laughter, felt more like a tomb than a home. The pain of that evening would be etched into his memory, an indelible mark of a love destroyed not by distance, but by betrayal. Once in the car, Asher took to the streets, his thoughts swirling like a tempest. He aimed for Finn's artist studio, where he felt a grim compulsion to seek answers, a desperate need to hold someone accountable for this unbearable agony. But no amount of forward motion could dislodge the wreckage within him. The weight of past grievances threatened to drown him. How could he have been so blind, so trusting of a brother who seemed to relish the chaos of competition? As he sped through Portland's rain-slicked streets, anger crystallized into something sharper than sadness. Finn, always the favored one, always wrapped in their parents' embrace of unconditional support, this was not just an affair. This was a betrayal of familial bonds, a premeditated assault on the very foundation of trust. Asher clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Finn would have to pay. The artist studio loomed ahead, its stark lines illuminated by the dim light of street lamps. Asher parked abruptly, taking a moment to steady himself. He had envisioned this moment in fragmented daydreams, conjuring countless scenarios of confrontation, but none could prepare him for the reality that lay ahead. He entered the studio, the residual hope that Finn would take responsibility flickering like a dying candle. Finn stood inside, surrounded by canvases and half-finished sculptures, a sanctuary of creativity, exuding an unspoken sense of privilege. He turned at Asher's entrance, his expression surprisingly calm, even smug, yet another reminder of how deeply their family dynamics twisted affection into hostility. "Asher, man," he said, his voice laced with a feigned camaraderie. "I was just about to text you. We need to talk." Asher approached, his heart hammering in his chest with vehemence. "Talk? Is that what you call this? You have casually destroyed my entire life, Finn." Finn crossed his arms, leaning back against the desk, embodying an unsettling confidence. "Look, it just happened, Asher. You were too busy chasing goals, and Maya needed someone who could understand her creativity. Someone like me." Asher flinched, anger coursing through him as Finn's words threaded through his mind. That insidious rationalization was what had made Finn so dangerous, always hurting the ones he was supposed to love while cloaking the pain in self-righteousness. "You manipulated her insecurities." Asher spat, his voice rising, shattering the veil of calm. "You were never good enough for her, and you knew it. You preyed on her vulnerabilities." "Do not act like you are the saint in all of this," Finn retorted, his voice tinged with defensiveness. "You thought being a data analyst was enough to keep her around, when all you ever did was bury yourself in work. You may be practical, but in this world, practicality does not mean love. You do not understand her heart." Asher took a step closer, his fists tightening. "Do not you dare twist this into something that is my fault. I was there for Maya when you flitted in and out of her life like a child playing dress-up. She was lonely, and you brought her false promises wrapped in familiarity." Finn raised an eyebrow, an almost modulated smile forming at the corners of his mouth. "She said you were emotionally distant, focused too much on your career rather than nurturing the relationship. She needed an artist, someone she could dream with, not a life mapped out in numbers and spreadsheets." Asher felt a flicker of betrayal twist within him, lodging deep behind his ribcage. How often had he felt overshadowed, like a shadow to Finn's unapologetic brilliance? "That is all you ever needed to win our parents' love, isn't it?" Asher demanded, searching for clarity amid the chaos. Each memory of their childhood spun in his mind. Every time he was criticized, belittled, and overshadowed, he recognized the grotesque favoritism for what it was, an arrangement that placed Finn's self-indulgent dreams above Asher's steady, determined approach. "Drama and artistry come naturally to me. Our parents supported my choices. They always wanted me to be free to explore." Finn shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. "And what about my sacrifices? The years I spent struggling to find a place for myself, only to be cast aside as practical Ashers. Did those sacrifices mean nothing to you? The words flooded out, every ounce of repressed anger cascading forth. Finn blinked, momentarily flustered, but it only propelled Asher deeper into his tirade, his voice gaining potency, carrying with it years of pent-up frustrations. This is not just about you or me. You had to have known how deeply this would hurt me, how it might destabilize everything I thought we shared. But I see it now. You have always craved the spotlight, and you exploited her insecurities to get it. Before he could process, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. With trembling fingers he grasped it and saw that his parents were calling. What now? He thought bitterly, feeling the weight of his family's expectations weigh heavily upon him. Do you really think you can just blame me for your failures? Finn broke in, the condescension washing over his words like a cold spray. This is a personal issue between you and Maya. Do not drag me into it. No, Finn, you have dragged yourself into this by choosing to betray your own brother. You actively hurt me. Asher Sip's voice wavered but resolved into a firm promise. Let us not forget, I have every right to demand accountability. Right? You know our parents would choose me over you any day. Finn Sep's voice dripped with false bravado. This is family. You should be above this pettiness and allow us to grow. Asher chuckled darkly. The words were a cruel dagger piercing through their fractured relationship. Instead of shock, he felt an oppressive calm wash over him, dispelling the storm that had raged only moments before. Family is not just about blood, Finn. It is about loyalty, responsibility, and trust, values you seem to have sacrificed in your pursuit of approval, Asher replied. The air hummed with tension, like the calm before an impending storm. Frustrated, Asher slapped his phone into silence, refusing to play their game anymore. The towering facade of parental favoritism vexed him, and what he had seen as unconditional love had turned into control and neglect under the guise of support. He could not seek their approval anymore. Instead, he chose to create boundaries, to value himself above familial expectations. Whatever, Asher, Finn responded dismissively, trying to maintain his aloofness. Parents will always take my side. You knows who they favor. At that moment, rage consumed Asher. He could withstand their neglect. He could endure the perpetual shadow that had followed him throughout his life, but he would no longer tolerate Finn as the source of his pain. You are dead to me, Asher declared, each word reverberating within the confines of the studio. Do not contact me again. With those words hanging heavy in the air, he stormed out, feeling the tumult of emotions wrestle within him until they fused into something akin to resolution. Outside, rain pummeled the ground as he stepped into the torrent, embracing the coolness against his skin. The path ahead felt uncertain and treacherous, but he took a deep breath, resolute in his decision. The storm of betrayal would not define him. It was time to choose himself, to build a life unshackled from a family that had chosen favoritism over integrity, and cut ties with those who did not understand the meaning of loyalty. As the rain fell around him, Asher felt liberated, knowing he was prepared to confront whatever else lay before him, learning to reconstruct a life of autonomy and self-respect. Stay with us as Asher confronts the fallout consequences of his family's betrayal, navigating through legal ramifications tied to an emotional battle that would force him to expand on his boundaries. In the face of adversity, he must learn to stand firm against the tide of intrusion, forcing himself into the process of healing and self-discovery as he ventures into uncharted territory. Asher's life had been set ablaze, a tumultuous upheaval in the wake of betrayal, and he was determined to extinguish the flames ignited by Finn and Maya. After the storm of emotions subsided, he retreated to an Airbnb that loomed like a lighthouse amid a turbulent sea, offering a rare sense of safety. The walls were bare, echoing the hollow shell of the life he once knew. Yet despite having carved out a space for solitude, he longed for distance from the relentless reminders of his past. He knew intuitively that taking a leave of absence from work was necessary. The data screens and analysis tools that once represented clarity now warped into instruments of anxiety, pulling him deeper into despair. Instead, he sought solace through extensive online therapy sessions, each conversation with his therapist algorithms coaxing him to unveil layers of hidden hurt. But just as he began to find his footing, the incessant chaos of his family crashed through the threshold of his newfound peace. It began with voicemails, bittersweet pleas from his mother Susan, whose voice dripped with emotional manipulation. Asher, you need to forgive, sweetie. We all make mistakes. Each message felt like a cold knife buried deeper into his heart. She cloaked her disapproval in affection, projecting that their family unity depended on his willingness to overlook transgressions. Finn did not remain silent either, wielding guilt like a weapon, sending texts filled with cryptic references and veiled accusations. Blood is thicker than water. Do you not care about our family? This is tearing us apart. Their messages rolled in like waves crashing against the shore, relentless in their demand for reconciliation. Asher could hear the echoes of years filled with parental favoritism and emotionally charged gatherings, years of feeling inadequate and overshadowed parading before him like a grotesque performance he could no longer endure. His parents, equipped with well-rehearsed lines, began looping in extended family members. Cousin Bethany and Aunt Carol sent messages filled with sweetened fabrications, demanding he reflect on the importance of family. Each time one of them reached out, the emotional strings they tugged transformed into a puppet show in which Asher would no longer participate. It was as if they were orchestrating a campaign to reverse the script of his own life, manipulating the narrative they had long written to favor Finn, the sensitive artist, and to vilify him, the practical analyst. Amidst the storm of emotional turmoil, Maya's intentions grew clearer. She sent an email, one long essay that felt more manipulative than heartfelt. In it, she stated that she was keeping the baby and expressed a desire for Asher to be a part of the child's life. Even as she spoke of her spiritual connection with Finn, implying that the familial bond should be honored, it felt more like a finalized trap than an olive branch. Asher could visualize the future she seemed to paint, a tapestry of shared moments and familial bliss, where he would play the role of the distanced uncle to a child who represented the ultimate betrayal. Daniel and Susan basked in their new notoriety, gripping onto the idea of a miracle grandchild as if it were their golden ticket to escape the mess they had created. Social media became their playground. Photos filled with phony smiles flooded their profiles as they painted a picture of joy and serenity, while Asher simmered in pain. The painful irony of celebrating a new life conceived through betrayal felt like salt on an already festering wound. His emotional state deteriorated alongside the harassment, panic attacks surfacing like uninvited guests, throwing his thoughts into disarray. He envisioned scenarios that twisted into nightmares every time Finn and Maya's names crossed his mind. The prospect of participating in the baby shower, a celebration built on shattered trust, felt like a device designed for his own suffering, and the mere thought of seeing Finn cradle their child made him nauseous. The relentless intrusion spiraled his mental health into chaos until he decided enough was enough. In a bold step towards reclaiming his autonomy, he sought legal counsel to explore the possibility of a restraining order against Finn and his parents. The unavoidable reality of the emotional turmoil screamed louder than any small voice in his head could muster. His lawyer supported his decision, emphasizing the importance of asserting boundaries for self-preservation, and so Asher embarked on a road steeped in resolute loneliness, but vital clarity. Yet the family dynamics retaliated. Out of desperation, Finn decided to push limits. One day, his brother confronted Asher near his apartment building. Things escalated dangerously. Finn, who appeared coaxed into action by their parents, confronted Asher with a chilling statement. "You cannot escape your blood, Asher. You need us. You need to stop being so dramatic." Asher's heart pounded, fury brewed within him, and without thinking he retorted, "Dramatic? You think manipulating people is part of the family code?" Finn sneered, leaning into the provocation, pushing Asher's buttons with vehement remarks about being such a victim. Their volatile exchange crescendoed until Finn eclipsed Asher's limited patience, demanding his equal standing in their family's narrative. Asher, overwhelmed by the flash of rage and betrayal, instinctively pushed Finn away from him, a decisive slip-up that sent Finn tumbling back into a nearby wall. The horror of the encounter left Asher breathless. Panic spread through him as he realized the implications of that moment, how he would turn into the antagonist in his family's ever-choreographed saga. Finn crumpled to the ground, clutching his head in a mix of shock and anger, mumbling shortly after, "You are insane." Instead of feeling satisfaction, Asher felt a rush of horror cascade over him. He scrambled to call emergency services beneath the shock of having slipped so low into the dark underbelly of their family's dysfunction. The aftermath was predictable. Finn's parents, who had already positioned themselves as crusaders of familial loyalty, flipped the narrative. An unprecedented emotional fallout opened the door for a legal battle that would cripple Asher's life even further. The civil battery suit filed against him loomed like a dark cloud over his head. Public opinion swirled into tumult, and Asher's name became a canvas splattered with shades of villainy in their family's twisted tale. Through it all, Maya's younger sister Chloe reached out desperately, appalled by how the affair unfolded. She provided Asher with slivers of clarity about Finn and Maya's relationship, how tensions simmered beneath the surface, fueling the facade of normalcy they tried to exhibit. This sense of betrayal clawed at Asher's mental state, knowing that familial bonds would fracture over the whims of two insensitive egos. As the litigation spun into a tempest of legal complexities, Asher fought to defend himself against the civil suit, recounting the events leading into the park and the fleeting moment of emotional unaccountability. He felt ever more convinced that the family he once sought to belong to had chosen sides, unwittingly marooning him in an emotional battle fueled by resentment and entitlement. As the final weeks of this hellish chapter dragged on, emotions bled into one another as each family member took their side, erecting walls fortified by competition and insecurity. The need to be seen and noticed took its toll, pushing Asher further into withdrawal. Rather than being enveloped in an ecosystem of familial comforts, he fought to pry himself away from a suffocating narrative that tried to paint his life in hues dictated only by chaos. What emerged from this trial was clarity, fragile but unyielding. Asher understood now that not all family ties are sacred. Not every bond is built on love and trust. He crafted boundaries not just for himself but for the independence he required to repair the wreckage of betrayal. With new clarity about who he was and how he deserved to be treated, he began envisioning a life free of family strife. Now, new horizons awaited him. It's time for Asher to regain control and determine his reality, cut the tumultuous strings anchored in familial burdens, and step into a realm paved by self-love and resilience. Thank you for joining me for this emotional journey through betrayal, family dynamics, and self-liberation. If you found this story relatable or enlightening, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you navigate difficult family dynamics? I would love to hear your stories. Do not forget to subscribe for more deeper dives into emotional narratives and life reflections. Remember, the path to reclaiming your autonomy can be daunting, but every step towards healing is invaluable. Until next time, take care and prioritize yourself. Peace.